Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Network Effect, Episode 9. This is the show where we open our little black book and connect you with some of the entrepreneurs, professionals, and investors from around the world who have interesting stories on how they're scaling their businesses, operating internationally, and give you some insight into running global businesses. I'm here, obviously, today with Gina. We've got a really exciting show for you today, one of our slightly different formats where today we're going to run through a bit of a thought leadership piece in the mental health space before handing over to Asma for her amazing interview. We've got a great guest from ENI, obviously massive players in the oil and gas sector. So we think hopefully, obviously, that will tie into a little bit about what we want to discuss today as well. But stay tuned for that. We're going to kick today off actually by speaking on mental health, as we mentioned. Now, this is obviously a very broad topic, so we're going to be focused in on a couple of areas, obviously, of how this impacts companies. We're also not experts on this, a bit of a disclaimer there. Everything here is sort of our opinions as well as facts from reputable sources and so forth. But I think given that we're both, before we kick into that, given such a wide topic, we thought it might be helpful just to give a definition on mental health, because I think one of the key areas in this field is education for people, understanding where and when you sort of start to step into this area and so forth. So I thought, Gina, if you want to jump in with a definition for us.
Yeah, definitely. So mental health is an integral part of our health, and the WHO defines it as a state of well-being in which individuals realize their own abilities and can cope with the stresses of their life, can work productively, and are able to make a positive contribution to his or her community. Another definition that I really like is that mental health, like physical health, fluctuates along a spectrum. It can move from good mental health into a more severe form of mental health. And work can have a huge impact on what that scale looks like. So today, I think we're really going to try and focus on what organizations can do to help, reduce the impacts of mental health on their workforce. And also what they can do to support their employees, especially throughout COVID, because at this time, we know that the workforce is really taking a toll when it comes to their mental health.
Yeah, there were a lot of variables before to take into account, and obviously COVID's just thrown a whole nother range onto that, and I guess we'll touch on it in a moment. And I think obviously we've been seeing a shift in healthcare, or if you have your eye on that space, towards preventative medicine and programs. A lot of insurance companies at the moment are starting to offer free wellness programs to their customers, because if they spend a little bit of money on wellness programs, keeping their clients healthy, they don't end up in hospital, which what costs more money to the insurance than providing the wellness program. So we've seen that shift in medicine, but also it's slowly starting to come to the mental health space. And I guess silver linings for COVID, it's sort of helping to do that. So, I mean, we're both expats that have sort of been impacted by this as well. So we thought we'd start with the expat experience, just to sort of narrow down our field and to take a bit of a look at it. I mean, I'm an Australian, but have been living in London for 8 years now. So I'm fairly well established here. But COVID did essentially stop me from being able to travel home, which I would normally do annually. Also, my parents were meant to be coming to the UK in, I think, April or May. Seems like a long time ago when that was meant to be happening. So I haven't seen my family in 2.5 years, other than obviously online. You kind of went slightly the other way and managed to get home, right?
Exactly, yeah. So I was luckily working in an industry that was quite on top of medical research, and they pretty quickly identified that COVID would likely lead to a pandemic. So I was alerted that I could head home back to South Africa, which was a game changer for me, because obviously I had access to my friends and network and family back home. But on the other hand, I guess I felt some mental health impacts because I had anxiety about returning to the UK, when I would be able to do so, lockdowns, not knowing, what would happen. And I think one of my favorite quotes when it comes to COVID is the main uncertainty is uncertainty. the main certainty is uncertainty. And that's so true, because you really don't know what's going to be thrown at you next, and that can really impact your anxiety and stress. So for me, that was one definite stressor that impacted my mental health.
Yeah, and I think this is just obviously a good example of, for any companies looking to start to implement a mental health policy or any sort of program, there are so many variables you need to start to take into account. So we went through some reports on just the expat experience to start with, and actually the majority of expats did flag up that the pandemic had caused the quality of their mental health to worsen, but actually also 22% of people that were surveyed said it had improved their mental health. So it's never going to be a one-size-fits-all for how you want to sort of approach it. They also did research on how expats responded to the following statement: "I would prefer to be in my home country during the COVID pandemic." 44% of people agreed with that statement, 15% strongly agreed, but 33% disagreed with the statement and were happy to be in the country they were sort of located in. Also, how it affects personal relationships is a very mixed story as well. So on one hand, a lot of expats had experienced growing tensions with family and friends back home, but 24%, so about a quarter of people said their relationships got worse. But 18% actually noticed an improvement in their relationship, so that it's quite a wide scale. I know for me personally, because I would be home fairly frequently, it seemed like, oh yeah, we'll see them soon, but with the uncertainty of not knowing when to next get back home, the frequency of video calls and so forth for me went right up, and the consistency in having conversations increased. So I would say it probably improved that relationship. So yeah, it's again just not a one-size-fits-all by any means.
No, definitely. And I think especially with the different lockdowns all around the world, some expats obviously started to reach out to their communities locally and were able to integrate a bit better. So in that way, I'm guessing it had pretty positive impacts on their experience in that country.
Yeah.
But again, it depends on where you are, because if you're in a strict lockdown, then those connections become quite tough. So
yeah, we also saw the demographics within the expat community be, if you had been longer established in your foreign country, then you were more likely to have had a positive experience. If it was a fairly recent move for you, you were more likely to have had a negative experience. So I can only imagine that if you just moved to London and then had been forced to live out of your flat for 6 months before you're allowed to go outside, or whatever that sort of time period was, it seems like a grey haze to me now, but that would have, without, like you said, your local community sort of established around you, would have been a much more different experience than if you've been here for long enough to have local friends in the right time zones and so forth. And I mean, that's just an example of the sort of expat experience, I guess, but this goes into the sort of companies as well, and then what's their sort of role and responsibilities within that. The interview today is obviously focused around the oil and gas sector, and I'm sure Asma's got some interesting questions around this as well, but we thought we'd just sort of quickly have a look at the impact on that as a specific industry. I mean, just to give some insight, workers in the oil and gas sector, even before COVID, are under a particular amount of pressure. They have to avoid mistakes because there are very serious consequences in that industry. Mistakes, you're looking at potential loss of life, environmental destruction if things go wrong, so there's a lot of pressure on that. You've also got the offshore element of people working away from home for long periods of time, which I guess some people started to experience potentially with COVID, but it's a very common thing in that industry for, isolation, loneliness, and frustration and dissatisfaction with the job is very common.
But I guess on top of that, I mean, in the oil and gas industry, that sector was kind of traveling throughout the pandemic. So even from March 2020, they were still the first industry to really start going out there again. And I guess the uncertainty about the countries you're going to, the COVID impact in that country, being locked down for a longer period of time than your full, assignment. So if you're assigned for 3 months on a rig offshore, and then you get that it gets extended because you're locked into that country, I'm assuming that will have really detrimental effects on those people's mental health. So companies really need to try and do the research before that occurs to try and prevent that situation as much as possible, or to at least provide the support for those people and those networks in case that does end up happening.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely one of the key industries looking to sort of make a change. I mean, it's always been a factor, but I think the traditional sort of approach to dealing with this was more to throw money at people and, you know, suck it up a little bit, I think was kind of the approach. I think also being obviously a male heavy industry, there's quite a stigma around mental health and a culture of, you know, you're a man, figure it out, sort your own problems out sort of thing. So,
but that's what I actually really like about COVID, is that it's really reduced that stigma, because I feel like people are way more open to talk about their experiences and, you know, how they're feeling, and even speak up to employers and say, you know, I'm not comfortable with this, I'm not ready to travel, I'm not ready to go back out there. And that should be the type of behavior that organizations are encouraging, right? Or at least providing them with the tools to help reduce that anxiety and reduce that stress.
Yeah, and that's what I was looking at as well, is like money is no longer enough of a temporary fix. That the younger generations and the generations that are upcoming now, we're taking mental health, access to things that we spoke on the Digital Nomad program a couple of episodes ago, and the benefits of that in terms of attracting better caliber of employees, that, you know, a bit more money is not going to change the fact that, you know, we sort of need access to mental health programs, we need a positive environment to be able to work in. Otherwise, you know, just going to look elsewhere and you're not going to be able to get access to the talent that you need.
What is it that companies can do to help reduce this mental health impact?
Yeah, it's a big question, and obviously, again, one that's thankfully kind of been a little bit accelerated with COVID. I mean, just to take a look at it first in terms of what is the cost before, like, why should you start looking and doing something about this? The World Health Organization estimates that poor mental health costs the global economy $1 trillion in lost productivity. That's trillion with a T.
That's crazy.
So just looking at the UK as a specific example, the business cost of mental health was 10.6, I think this was 2016 to 2017, it was 10.6 billion in sickness absence, 21.2 billion in reduced productivity when at work, presenteeism, and then 3.1 billion just in replacing staff who leave due to mental health reasons. So, I mean, the cost impact is massive. The Centre for Mental Health shows that the sort of aggregate cost of employers spending on mental programs in the UK was about 34.9 billion, which was the equivalent of £1,000 per employee, which ultimately is not too bad, but that's also averaging out compared to people that aren't spending and so forth. So if you put a proper program in place, you can get a decent mental health package for sort of £80 to £100 per employee, which can have a massive impact for the business and reduce those costs.
Huge. I think also just making managers aware of what those triggers could be to really help identify, you know, mental health stresses within their workforce, and specifically with employees that they know well, because, you know, a manager will have that responsibility to, you know, notify HR, especially with these bigger organizations, and somebody needs to take this new responsibility, because previously I don't think companies really had this very structured process in place, but that is changing. And I think that's going to help to retain talent, is to provide that type of mental health support and mental well-being support.
Yeah, a big key for this is going to be creating a culture of openness that employees are willing to do. And quite often the most effective way to affect or impact culture is from the top down. So leadership training is probably one of the first areas in supporting with developing a mental health program. The other impact is obviously to understand that these things are having an impact and supporting in the right areas. You do need to be able to sort of survey your staff, which you're only going to get good data if they feel like they're able to be open and to answer this. So even things like having leadership speak on their own mental health challenges and share that openly with the company are big steps to help in that direction.
I was reading a report on burnout, and some companies companies are starting to implement this 1 week of holiday for across the whole company, so that everyone's on leave at the same time to prevent burnout within their workforce. And that's really important, because often when we go on holiday, we're still, prone to checking our emails and checking our phones. But if the whole company's off for a full week, then everyone is forced to switch off, which I think in the long run will definitely help reduce that mental health impact.
Also, just coming back from that week off, you're all then sharing the pressure of coming back to it. But yeah, we had a couple of companies we work with email us and just say, hey, the whole company's taking a week off. If you need anything, tell me now, or wait a week, which I think is really powerful. A few things that companies can specifically start doing to help in the mental health space is obviously making some self-assessment tools available. Obviously, it can be, as we said, really difficult for people to take the first step and share. So if they can use some self-assessment, they're far more likely to start engaging in that way. Offering free or subsidized clinical screenings for depression and with qualified mental health can be really valuable. Offering health insurance with no or low costs for depression medication, mental health counseling. But some of the other areas is also trying to be proactive in preventative measures as well. So we've even seen companies providing free or subsidized lifestyle coaching, counseling, or self-management programs. So similar to the health industry, where it's better to help someone with their gym membership get them healthy rather than them get to a place where they end up in hospital. If you can start to create positive mental health impact with your employees, rather than wait for it to become a problem and then try and treat it. These things can be really impactful, both for your bottom line, all the numbers I mentioned in terms of loss of productivity, but like we said, better staff, more incentivized to work for your company and so forth as well can be a big factor.
No, I completely agree, and I think companies are starting to make the right move, and hopefully this just continues to get better over time.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we, just as a ballpark though, this is obviously a big impact, a long-term program to start in place, and it's not going anywhere, so you may as well get started now. But the average ROI, this was based in Canada, was about 3 years to become price positive, or investment positive, where they're actually financially benefiting. But what that took into account was cost versus reduction in cost. What it didn't take into account was things like improved productivity. So what you're able to achieve in that first year with more productive staff and so forth is very difficult to calculate. So it really could be a lot sooner than that. But this is something where if you're interested, it's definitely worth speaking to HR specialists. It's definitely worth consulting with firms as well as to how you can bring this into your business. A really important starting point is, rather than just trying to put a mental health program in place or add it to your employee benefits, is actually analyzing your workplace and culture. If you're the type of business who really discourages people from taking their earned annual leave, which is common in a lot of industries, then putting the mental health in place is putting a band-aid on the problem kind of thing. So you need to also look at that. We do work with partners in this space who can both provide the programs for you to provide to employees, as well as consultants who can come in and take a look at your business, work on 3-month programs to help the company, right up to 12-month programs to start implementing these sort of things in the right way. So, as we said, it's worth getting started sooner rather than later. It's not going away. It's going to be a part of the future. So
yeah, mental health is just as important as your physical health. So prioritize it.
Definitely. One more stat from me was that if you end up in hospital with both concurring physical issues and mental health issues, it costs 3 times more to treat you than if you just go in with one of the two. So very important to take a look at both. So yeah, I mean that's a very small snippet of the overall topic we wanted to get into. There's so many more variables to take into account, and if you're interested in this, please feel free to get in touch. As I mentioned, we do have partners and experts in this field who are able to support, and that's the benefit of reaching out to a network. I guess is we're here to connect you with the right people who can help. We've got another amazing interview today with Asma, speaking with our guest from ENI, so I'm sure they'll touch a little bit on this as well and look at how the oil and gas industry is changing the way they work. But I guess without further ado, we'll throw over to Asma. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 9 of the Network Effect, and really good to be here on again. So like every week, we have amazing speakers that come on to talk about their industry, their inspiring journeys, and anything that we feel is motivational, informational and educational as well for our audience. And so today is like no other week. We've got an absolutely amazing guest coming on board. But before I make a formal introduction, I just wanted to kind of set the scene in terms of what we're going to talk about today and the sector itself. So I've personally worked with the oil and gas sector probably for more than 15 years. A lot of clients actually in this sector were clients of mine over a period of 15 years. And so I understand the industry really well. And when I go back to sort of the early parts of my career, I was involved in a number of government initiatives when it was about skills, talent, shortage occupations that existed in the UK, when UK companies couldn't find qualified engineers. And I worked with the DIT back then to be able to lobby and support initiatives to be able to do that. So the challenges have always existed within this sector and this industry, and I think there's been turbulence, over the years with so many different challenges that this, the energy sector has experienced. And I thought COVID has come along now, and post-COVID and post-pandemic, it's actually even more challenging. And it would be interesting to see how this particular industry group is transforming and also innovating in the way that they work, and are they keeping up with the times? And so, without further ado, I'd like to actually introduce our guest for today. He is somebody that I've known for a number of years. He is in contract management within ENI. So please welcome Robert Reeves.
Asma, how are you doing?
Hi Rob, how are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. Really interesting discussion, the first part of the meeting. Yeah, I'm doing well, and that's largely thanks to our HR department that we have in our place and different things that we've put in place, because work hours have changed totally. Now that you're using Teams, Zoom and everything else, the world's changed. You're more connected, but then still quite far apart. So it's interesting times.
Absolutely, yes. So, I mean, the topic itself is an interesting one, and I guess when the sort of the lockdown first happened back in March 2020, one of the key things was that the world came to a standstill, over a period of time. But the oil and gas sector still kept going, right? So that's my personal experience. I was still advising companies where they were, kind of stranded in different locations. They needed to get home. We were chartering flights. We were trying to do some government liaison with various different industries and ministries. So tell us a little bit about your experiences and what happened at that time and how you overcame those problems.
Well, like you've just said there, nothing stopped. It slowed down, and then also, there's been more thought in process and how things are done. And a number of our colleagues, like your colleagues just said a second ago, expats stuck in different places, not seeing family for, in some instances, 6 months, a year, maybe even longer. One of my colleagues was living in a flat in London, and I don't think he'd seen anybody for 6 months. Our finance manager, for example, he spent the best part of 12 months living in a 2-bedroom flat with him and his child. And it's been tough because the work hours have changed as well. The work hours have become more slightly erratic. Way that we connect now using these different methods is, once we're all sitting in an office, quite happily, somebody would knock on your door, they come in, you discuss whatever it might be, go on to the next thing. But now it's a case of there's lots of questions, lots of things going on, and it's lots of different media platforms being used for it. So to some extent, it's overload.
Yeah,
I think there's that interesting statistic a minute ago from who. There was another one as well, which I remember because I was reading about the other day, and it was saying 2019 the biggest killer of all is suicide.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't want to get into a dark place, but it's 55 million people killed themselves, and it's not just because of work, but because of multiples of things. And it's understanding not just your teams, the people you work with, identifying signs of problems, difficulties. I mean, we're lucky; we've got an amazing HR department. Right at the start of it, I think 3 to 4 months in, we did a consultant piece. So I set it up with HR, and it reached out to the staff members, and it looked at how they were coping, what tools they were using, hours of work, what were the plus sides, what were the detractors, and all of these sort of things. And it was quite interesting to see the results. And I think our last meeting, when we met at Pasika meeting, that was partly what I went into at some stage, and went into what we were seeing. And interestingly enough, we're going to be looking at doing some more of that as well, and trying to understand how people are working, because the work it's never going to be the same now. We've put different tools in place now, but we have different expectations as well. So it's trying to make sure that the business aligns with the people, the staff, to make sure that they're not overloaded, which can be easily done. I talk to my many colleagues all the time about how they're feeling, how they're doing. And I can tell you from sort of personal experience that I've struggled. You'll do a 14, 16-hour day because your brain doesn't switch off. You're still thinking, right, I'm behind, or there's something that's not been done.
Yeah.
And it's having boundaries in place. It's having companies understanding that there is a life outside of work. Most of us either have families, we have relationships, but even going out for a walk. Before our meeting, I had a coffee with a colleague of mine that's running one of our process departments, and it's very interesting. She has these constant conversations and catch up with everybody, and sort of making sure that they're okay, because you've got within the engineering sector itself, you've got very diverse and neurodiverse brain sets. ADHD, autism, everything. So it's making sure we keep sort of understanding people.
So Rob, one of the things that I guess has come out of this is that, and I think that my team kind of alluded to that earlier, is that a lot of people have historically found it difficult to talk about mental health. And I don't want to make the whole session about mental health, but it is quite a serious one, and it is quite an important one. And I think one of the things that's come out of the pandemic is this balance factor of the personal life, of being able to have a balance, being able to enjoy life, being able to give your own health serious consideration, as well as keeping the work life in check as well, because a lot of people have to work to live. So in terms of that, how has that impacted your industry as a whole, in terms of, because obviously with the oil and gas industry, there's the office space, you've got to be there together, the teams have got to work there together. So it's not like remote work is easy to do. They're on site, on projects. So how have you managed those challenges?
Well, I'll tell you how we've managed it. I'll tell you how, because obviously I've sort of conversations with people, sort of the hackers and different people, flirts and all of this, and they've taken different approaches, and some of them taken the same as us. Looking at their workforce, how they function, and sometimes they didn't function as well as they do now, possibly. But it's also working out how they can sort of have this work-life balance. And for us, it's been a case of, hate the saying, but suck it and see. To start with, it's very much changed from the start to now, and it's also making sure that people understand that there's baby steps. Sometimes you have to switch off, and it's certainly within our HR department, they will tell people that that's enough. Doing a 60+ hour week, it leads to burnout. People do burn out, and that's crucial. What's going on, but. Getting back to the other question quickly, a lot of people, ACCA certainly, I know somebody there, they've offices, they've closed one down because they've worked out that they can be more competitive by working from home, so that, London office, with the lease with X amount of 100 people working in it, that's an overhead. So when they're going out to the different oil majors, they could be more competitive. They still have offices, so they can still go and meet up, they can still communicate. But then at the same time, that does lose those conversations that you have. Certainly what I've talked about and missed with different people is those conversations that you wouldn't normally have. About different things that you might you forget to put in an email or something. Something you might have missed, and it's quite, it's interesting how sometimes you need to see people face to face, because realistically we've got Teams, and you've got the messaging service on Teams, you've got the VC on Teams, you've got your emails, you've got telephone calls, but when you see somebody face to face, then it's a different dynamic. So it's understanding what dynamic works and how well it works. And sorry to drag on too much, but understanding, because what I find a lot is that when somebody sends an email, they then reinforce it with an instant message afterwards, because you've not picked it up straight away.
Yes,
and
exactly.
What's happening with that is you're diluting people's work, because you're not sort of enabling them to spend their time doing their main objective, which is their work. So it's constant bombardment. So it's working out when you should be looking at your emails. Do you have your emails open? I'm terrible. I have my emails on constantly. And I'll have a look at emails at 2:00 in the morning. For some reason why that's when my brain works. I'll then go, I need to answer that straight away. It's
become like that, though, hasn't it? I mean, I'm finding that personally as well, that you're available 24/7 really around the clock, and there's just no break in between. But this is a huge subject, and we could probably dedicate hours to it. But I would be really interested to know more about. So my experience with contracts teams, commercial teams, procurement. It's a pain, right? Sorry to say it, but it's a pain, right? No. So you're one of those painful people that we have to deal with when we want to win business and win tenders. So I'm just going to put it out there.
No, I totally understand that, and I'll tell you why there is that pain. I mean, it's twofold. Okay, so my job, my role is to make sure that commercially we're compliant. It's to make sure that everything ticks a box. So when it comes to when we're audited, when we're reviewed, everything is in place and there's no issues, because issues can mean multi-million-pound lawsuits.
Yes.
It can mean, loss of reputation. That's massive. You've seen different oil majors where they've had, their names sort of taken through the mud. Won't mention any names, but because of that, it loses your bottom line.
Yeah.
That's a massive thing. So we are the pain, but the pain is necessary. And don't get me wrong, because I now I'm sort of the procurement side of things. I've been 18 years, and then contract management, more sort of on the other side, making sure things work. For the last couple of years, and I understand the reason behind things. It's kind of I've been on both sides of the fence, and I have that pain. Realistically, now this is just an example. A contract, and this is not just in ENI, this is in most companies. You're looking at 6 to 12 months if you need to have a proper commercial tender. Why is that? So, you start off with your scope. You start off with whatever brief it might be, and it's understanding what's needed. Because a lot of the time, what's needed doesn't transpire at the end. That's always been my issue, is that there's not always, and I think that was one of the things we talked about before, was how we sort of engage with different departments. I've always seen it that you engage with everybody that's going to be in control or part of the contract. If you don't do that, then what happens at the end is the contract management isn't possible. It's hard, because trying to go and manage something that is not fit for purpose is, it's very hard. And you can have your SLIs, you can have your KPIs, you can have your liquidated damage, you can have everything in place, but unless it is focused and everybody understands it, there's a problem. So we are needed, and probably a lot of people in the industry, and certainly within my sort of professional family and body, would say we're the most, we're very important. I don't think that's the case. I think we are a part of the machine that has to be understood, And again, I'm probably going to ramble now, but if you take it back, sort of 20 years ago, and when I first got into things, procurement was always a subset. It was always, commercial maybe. We'll have it in operations. We'll have it into different areas, and the problem with that is it was never defined. It was always sort of controlled in a bit of a contrived way, And it was always basically to sort of try and tick as many boxes as possible, but then get to the end goal, because procurement it's been around forever, since we've been using stones or pebbles or shells for bartering and trying to get things.
Yeah.
We've always had something in place, but it's only in recent years.
So, Rob, I mean, obviously, like you describe it, it's been around for years, right? So, the same traditional methods, the same processes. Has anything changed post-pandemic? I mean, organizations across the board where I'm going, people are trying to become leaner. And I guess one of the things that has come out of this pandemic is that, we see departments, we see HR departments, we see, like you say, the commercial department, you see the legal department, you see various other departments, and they all kind of work. Either sometimes they're forced to work in sync, but most of the time they're working on their own. I mean, is the pandemic now forcing departments to become leaner? Is that the shift? What are you doing to transform?
Well, 100%, and that's I talk to many colleagues over many different industries, and there's definitely there's a shift. The shift is, like you've just said, to be leaner. It's understanding your OPEX and your CAPEX. The different areas of it, and first of all, it's a reduction. I don't think there's any company I know that hasn't gone back straight away to all the suppliers a couple of months into the pandemic and said, right, we want a reduction. We want a reduction in cost. What's that mean? For me, I'm slightly pragmatic in that, because for me, that's a reduction in service. It's a reduction in something. If you take 10 or 15, 20% off of a supplier, where are they taking that from? So most people have gone back to their supply base and sort of say demanded, but they've certainly asked for changes because it is needed. So yeah, there is a big shift towards this, but also departments are talking more. They are sort of trying to understand the briefs better and also what's needed. So it's difficult times on that side of things. It's difficult times for the end user and obviously the supply base.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that. But I think that, so just kind of looking at this, and we're looking at one of the challenges that the industry faces is the skills gap as well, right? So like I was talking about earlier in the intro, when I go back to say 10 to 15 years ago, I remember, going up to the Home Office, going up to sort of, working with some of the government teams on recognizing what could be done in schools, in universities, in terms of education, of bringing more young talent into the oil and gas sector. It was all a challenge back then. It had nothing to do with COVID and had nothing to do with anything. But most of our, graduates or children coming out of the schools, they did sciences. They probably did really well, but they went into university. They graduated with all the degrees from Imperial and Oxford and Cambridge, and then decided to do investment banking because either it pays more or it was just a little bit more sexier than any other industry. And so I'd like to understand. That was back then, right? I'm talking about 15 years ago. We now fast forward. COVID has happened post-pandemic. What's being done in this industry to attract talent, and are we producing enough talent?
What I can tell you on that side of things, because we normally in Seeker we have the commercial committee meeting, and we talk about this every single time. The industry days that they put on. Different parts of our industry go to the universities. We try and have different graduates of ours that have sort of progressed and sort of talk to people and sort of say, this is what you can expect. There's different changes. It's been hard to attract people, and it certainly hasn't got any better since probably you last looked into it. But from the way the industry is going at the moment and the way that we're looking at things, we're looking at renewables. We're looking at things that, you talk about banking being sexy. It sounds a bit sad really, but renewables sexy. Renewables and the solar farms, the photovoltaics, all the different things that we're looking at doing, the hydrogen capture, they are things that sort of people are sort of getting on board with. And I think when you sell that, or if you sort of give people an idea that that's the industry you can get into, because that's what all majors are going into. All majors are having to diversify. We've got this, in the UK at least, the 2030 deadline for different things that we have to go and stop using, or cars that we won't be able to go and buy a diesel or a petrol car anymore. There's a massive shift. So it's really getting people to understand what it actually means to be within that sector, because that sector's changed. And certainly for what am I now? Eight years into this side of things. Before that, like I said to you before, mining and everything like that. Another hard one to go and push people into. But people are understanding that it's changed because it was all about getting the best price for the barrel. It was extracting it at the lowest cost, making sure that it was everything was maintained properly, so it keeps obviously your OpEx costs down. So it's really understanding what is out there and what else can be sort of looked at. So I think we're doing it. I think certainly Tracy Shelley, you obviously know on the Psyche side of things, is not selling, but certainly sort of saying what else is available and what the industry means. It's understanding that, I think.
But just thinking out loud, and just from your commentary there, it just made me wonder, because the ECITB has done a lot of work on this, right? The Engineering Council, and a huge amount of work. And I've just struggled to understand why there isn't enough movement in being able to attract that talent or to build that talent in country and not having to seek it from outside. And I guess one of the things that just occurred to me there is, the people that work behind the scenes to attract these candidates to the oil and gas sector, are they actually engineering people themselves, or is it sort of external candidates that can actually dress this up and maybe communicate this in a better way to be able to sell the industry in a more educational way, or maybe target the millennials in a better way?
Yeah, no, I get that. I'm 1 year off of being a millennial.
Yeah, well, you know where I'm coming from.
I think that is always been the problem I've seen. The people that sort of push down that road are generally a lot of the older engineers, a lot of the people that have always known what it was in the past rather than what it is in the future. And that certainly from the Seeker side of the world is the way that things are happening. And could it be done differently? Yes, it could. Could it be sold better? Probably, because it's about vision, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's really a vision that sometimes, this sounds terrible, but and I'm sure we've got lots of engineers all tuned into this. A lot of my friends are engineers, but the mindset is very focused. It's not always where outside of the box. It doesn't think of all the different possibilities. And yeah, you're right. It could be addressed slightly differently, and maybe with people that are in a different sort of world.
No, completely. And I'll tell you why I say that, because if you look at the tech sector, right, and I'm just thinking out loud here, so please don't quote me on any of this, but I'm just thinking out, so tech sector works really well. So you've got a founder, right, but they've got a vision, they've got an idea and a business, they're building a business and they've got it. But actually, the technology piece they can't do. So they need to bring in that expert. So I see that like an engineer comes in to build, to develop, to do all of that. But then you need that visionary, you need that person who's developing that business side. So can the engineering sector or the oil and gas sector benefit from this marrying of two sides that actually help accelerate the intake or the interest in the younger generation in this industry group? Because there's a real struggle. I mean, I know a lot of people are doing this thing about STEM now. It used to be the engineering sector, standalone, but now it's STEM is a big thing in the UK. But how much that's, the change is happening there, I don't know. But I'm going to move on to contracts again. I keep diversifying. We do mental health, we do the skills, talent, but there's so much to talk about with you that, we could be here for hours, but obviously I want to try and focus around the contracts and the commercial side. So, Rob, it'd be really good to learn more about the commercial contract side, right? What are you doing? What are you innovating in there? What are you transforming in the commercial side? So that if companies are looking into, becoming suppliers or renewing contracts or what's to come? What's the innovation that's happening in your space?
That's an interesting one. I think we were talking about sort of suppliers and what we were doing with them a second ago, and it kind of transfers over because, the whole onboarding process for suppliers into any part of my industry is massive. It's we put I think a figure of tens of thousands to actually onboard a supplier. Obviously you're looking not just at the ISOs, you're reviewing all the accounts, you've done a Bradstreet obviously, and all of these different things, and you're looking at those. And there are we're not at the moment. We ENI as it were. Different parts of us probably are, but I don't know about it. But there's different softwares and different things out there that can be used. You've got Achilles, what was it? I think there's about 3 or 4 softwares that actually do most of the process for you to actually go and onboard a supplier that gets you to the stage where, and also rationalise your supplier base as well. Because one of my old jobs was many years ago was to look at the supply base and reduce it down. I think the first target was 30% or something like that. And having, I think, 10,000 suppliers, that's fairly easy. So it's using the technologies to go and sort of further the agenda, but to get it to a stage where you can actually look at the main things, which is, what you're trying to get at the end of the process. So yeah, there's quite a few different software types out there as well. Trying to think off the top of my head, there's quite, normally I talk to about 3 or 4, not through ENI, but with what they're doing. I think Avetta's another one as well. They do a pre-qual and sort of onboarding process where they look at all the potential risks of the supplier, because there's a massive risk when it comes to suppliers. If you've got the wrong supplier, it's reputation, maybe loss of money, not just through the reputation, but also them not producing what they need to. And we've always been an industry very focused on inspection and following things through. So we do use different things, and I know that most of these competition people out there have softwares in place that they use constantly. I remember our last conversation with was it Toloni from Fleur, for example.
Yeah.
We were talking about Power BI. That's a perfect example of this actually, and how reporting can be well run and understand every sort of part of it. So you might have the supply chain and then right to the actual end product, and it's breaking all those different parts down and using it as a tool. I know that us as a company, we're using Power BI to a certain extent and trying to push it through. So it's a slow process. Any major it's like I'll refer it to an oil tanker. To go and change direction is 5 miles, or however many miles it is. It's a very slow process because there's so many things and hurdles that we have to actually jump through before we can actually get to there. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
No. It's, every answer is an interesting answer, right? So we're educating people here, giving them information that probably wouldn't otherwise have, an insight into a procurement team. So if anyone's trying to go and win a bid or do something, I think these are great insights. And I guess the other thing that I would like to ask is, and again, some companies do have a policy around it, but whether your sector, and I don't know if ENI as a whole, but supplier diversity, is there any policy around that, or is it about low risk? How do you select suppliers? What's the process for that?
Great question, and it changes constantly. The supplier sort of, obviously we have a supply base already, and that gets constantly reviewed. Again, we refer back to John Bradstreet. We review their actual financials as well to make sure that they have a certain amount of turnover, and also that we're not the highest part of their portfolio, because if that the risk is too high. So there's lots of different things that we look at doing, and winning it's
a tough question.
It is a tough question because there's so many things. We talked about ISOs before. It's making sure, would we look at a company without an ISO? Possibly. Depends on their turnover, and it depends on what specifically they do. But you can generally, UK based, you can relate an ISO back to what the quality, the quality, the management, and the process they have in place. We know that when we audit them, because we generally audit X amount of times, we know that they can perform the service.
Okay. And I think we've obviously run out of time. And I'm just going to thank you very much for coming on here today and touching on some of these really interesting subjects. But these are quite detailed topics, which will be of interest to many, many people. So thank you very much for coming on today, and I hope everyone enjoyed. And I look forward to seeing you all again next week. Thank you.